You think power is synonymous with laughter, clinking glasses, dazzling photos, and reassuring pats on the back. You imagine the throne as a warm chair, surrounded by friends, advisors, and admiring faces. But the truth, colder and far more ruthless, is that power is not an endless celebration. Real power happens in silence, in long corridors where decisions are made without a single warning. The higher you climb, the less you hear genuine applause, not because you want to push people away, but because you are forced to. At the top, every smile may conceal a dagger, every compliment may hide a scheme. Machiavelli saw this 5 centuries ago in Florence, and those who hold power today, from corporate boardrooms to international politics, still quietly follow his wisdom. Picture this: a CEO has just announced a billion-dollar deal. That evening, amid the clinking of glasses, he laughs and throws an arm around a colleague. But later, alone in a quiet room, staring out at the city lights, he knows the truth. This joy is not for sharing. One small mistake, one leaked secret, and the friends of today can become tomorrow's rivals. The hard truth is this: power does not reward naivety. It rewards alertness, the ability to see through a smile and understand the game being played. And that game is not for dreamers who want to be both loved and powerful. At the summit, you must choose. This is not the tragedy of a heartless person. It is the law of survival, a rule history has proven, from Caesar stabbed in the back to modern leaders undone because they trusted friendship too much. Machiavelli and lessons across the centuries. Florence, early 16th century, a city of art and intrigue. The cobblestone streets where Michelangelo carved his statues and Leonardo sketched his timeless ideas were the same streets where Machiavelli, now in exile, sat observing the game of power with eyes that had seen too much blood and betrayal. He was no longer the celebrated diplomat of the Florentine Republic. Power had slipped from his grasp as old allies switched sides and promises evaporated. And in that solitude, he began to write. The Prince is not a sermon on morality. It does not teach you to be good. It is a survival manual. Machiavelli did not sugarcoat reality. He wrote with the blood of the overthrown and the lessons learned from the corpses of monarchs who had been beheaded or exiled. When he wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both," he was not encouraging senseless cruelty. He was pointing to a hard truth. The love of the crowd is fragile and fickle, but fear is durable and dependable. 5 centuries have passed, yet every page of The Prince still mirrors today. A CEO slashes thousands of jobs to save a company, fully aware he will be hated, but acting anyway. A national leader makes a painful choice, knowing that momentary popularity does not guarantee lasting safety. They don't need to hold the book in their hands. They live by it, consciously or unconsciously. What sets Machiavelli apart is his ruthless candor. He did not console, flatter, or paint illusions. He declared, "Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and greedy." That is not a curse, but a compass for anyone who wishes to survive at the summit. And here is where many misunderstand him. Machiavelli did not glorify cruelty. He warned that a lack of vigilance is what leads to bloodshed. He did not write to encourage betrayal. He wrote to ensure you would not become its victim. In a world where power is an endless battlefield, that lesson remains just as vital. From distant Florence to the boardrooms of the 21st century. Caesar, Elizabeth I, Churchill, exemplars of vigilance. Let us return to ancient Rome. Julius Caesar, the brilliant general and masterful statesman, stepped into the Senate on a fateful day. Surrounding him were not open enemies, but friends. Allies who had once campaigned beside him, raised their glasses with him, and laughed with him at lavish banquets. But history remembers that day not for the laughter, but for 23 stab wounds. Among the hands wielding daggers was Brutus, the man Caesar regarded as a son. Caesar's death was not merely a personal betrayal, it was a cold confirmation of Machiavelli's rule. Loyalty always has an expiration date, and blind trust is a fatal vulnerability. Leaving Rome, we arrive in 16th century England. Elizabeth I, the Virgin Queen, reigned for 45 years without marrying. Around her swarmed countless suitors, princes, nobles, even kings. She flirted, delayed, and promised, but never surrendered her heart or her power. She understood perfectly. Marriage meant shared rule, and shared rule meant the risk of overthrow. Elizabeth transformed solitude into political leverage, turning men's ambitions into tools to reinforce her throne. Her choice allowed her to sleep each night, unafraid that a husband might become a rival. Fast forward to the 20th century. Winston Churchill, the man who led Britain through World War II, knew well the weight of solitude. He once said, "The price of greatness is responsibility," and remarked that true leadership is often lonely. After his nation's glorious victory, Churchill was not rewarded with enduring affection. Merely a year after triumph, the public voted him out of office. He did not beg, plead, or lash out. He understood that power is never permanent. It is only a short-term lease, and the rent is paid in solitude, and at times, in scorn. These three stories, Caesar stabbed, Elizabeth declining marriage, Churchill stepping down in silence, share one message. Vigilance is not cynicism, it is survival. Power does not merely demand talent. It demands eyes always open to the hearts of others, even the hearts of those closest to you. The modern world, Buffett, Jobs, and invisible walls. Our era no longer has stone palaces or councils of nobles, but the game of power remains unchanged. Look at Warren Buffett, one of the richest men on the planet. Yet his office in Omaha, Nebraska is nothing more than a modest little box. No entourage, no PR team on standby, no calendar crammed with media appearances. He reads his own letters, answers his own phone, and makes his own decisions. Buffett understands well. The more eyes and ears involved, the greater the chance information will be distorted or leaked. His simplicity is not carefree rusticity. It is an invisible wall, protecting him from hands that would meddle with his empire. Steve Jobs offers a sharper lesson. In 1985, during a quiet coup at Apple, Jobs, the founder, creative genius, and symbol of the company, was ousted by his own board. He disappeared, stayed silent, and when he returned, he was different, tougher, more guarded, and distance had become his guiding principle. Under his renewed leadership, he rotated teams frequently, dismissed those who lagged or resisted, and kept his inner circle so small that no one could predict his next move. Even his family and doctors were not fully informed about his health until it was too late. This was not because Jobs hated people. It was strategy, a way to maintain absolute control in a world where news travels faster than an idea can mature. Today, tech CEOs, politicians, and financial titans build similar walls. They surround themselves with layers of assistants, lawyers, and advisors, not out of arrogance, but because they know every conversation could become a leak. In the age of social media, a single message or email sent at the wrong time can destroy an entire career. Buffett and Jobs represent two different styles, one using simplicity as a shield, the other using iron discipline. But both understood the same truth. Power survives through control of information and distance. At the summit, a careless word or misplaced trust can be the spark that burns down the fortress. The psychology of solitude: why distance creates power. Solitude is not merely an emotional state. In the world of power, it is a carefully honed psychological tool. When you create distance, you control the mental space, both yours and that of others. Silence and distance force opponents to ask themselves questions, to build their own hypotheses, to sketch out scenarios in their minds. That very uncertainty becomes the sharpest weapon without a single spoken threat. Social psychologists have shown that people fear what they do not understand. A predictable leader makes others feel safe, and safety emboldens them to oppose you. But a leader who stays silent, withholding their full emotions, compels others to tread carefully. They don't know what you're thinking, so they hesitate, delay, and sometimes abandon their plans to move against you. Distance also shields you from being swept up in the emotions of others. In close relationships, we often absorb one another's feelings. Someone else's anger, anxiety, or panic can cloud your judgment. A powerful leader must maintain a cold clarity of vision to make precise decisions, even when their own heart is stirring. Machiavelli himself warned, "A ruler cannot allow compassion to blind them when a decisive strike is necessary." Yet solitude has its dark side. Many great leaders have admitted that long, quiet nights can become an abyss that consumes the mind. A lack of connection erodes trust in humanity and leads to extreme suspicion. That is why the wisest leaders preserve a small number of strong, dependable connections. Not to share strategic secrets, but to keep themselves from becoming absolute cynics. Solitude, therefore, is not merely a defensive tactic. It is the art of shaping perception. Used skillfully, it forces the world to respect, or at least fear, you. But if overused, it turns you into a cold fortress with no windows. And when there are no windows, you're not just keeping enemies out. You may also be imprisoning yourself within. The risk of too many connections. When friendship turns into a blade. In the world of power, every relationship is a variable. As your circle widens too far, the risks grow with it. Warm handshakes, cozy dinners, solemn vows of loyalty, all of them can turn into daggers overnight. Machiavelli observed this in Florence. Men are ungrateful, fickle, false, cowardly, and greedy. That warning has never gone out of date. Consider modern corporate scandals. CEOs once praised as cultural icons, yet with just one leaked email, one disgruntled former colleague, or one longtime friend's betrayal, their careers collapse in mere days. At the summit of power, it doesn't take an army to bring you down. All it takes is one old friend whispering the wrong story into the wrong ear. In a world where information is a weapon, too many connections mean too many entry points. History has proven this too. Many kings, generals, and statesmen were not toppled by open enemies, but by trusted confidants. Caesar was stabbed by Brutus. Numerous Chinese emperors were betrayed by concubines or eunuchs. Business leaders like Steve Jobs once trusted a board of directors, only to be ousted by them. The danger does not come from outside the gates. It comes from the people you allow inside your fortress. Psychology also shows that familiarity breeds expectation. When someone feels they deserve special treatment because of personal ties, they react harshly when those expectations are unmet. A vice president once considered a friend may become your fiercest critic if passed over for promotion. A business partner who once toasted you over drinks may leak company secrets if they feel sidelined. This does not mean you must live in absolute suspicion, but it reminds you that uncontrolled connections can become liabilities. Those who maintain power over the long term do not hoard friends indiscriminately. They choose carefully, establish boundaries, and maintain necessary distance. They understand, too many ties do not make you stronger. They simply make it easier to pull you down when one strand snaps. Human moments, keeping a touch of warmth amid the storm. In the cold corridors of power, it's easy to believe you must turn your heart to stone. But even the most calculating strategists understand. A touch of humanity does not make you weak. It keeps you human. Machiavelli never called for merciless cruelty. He merely warned against letting kindness become a vulnerability. Distance is necessary, but a well-timed gesture of warmth can be a subtle yet powerful weapon. Consider Winston Churchill. Though tough and at times abrasive, he still took time to handwrite letters encouraging ordinary soldiers, or to send flowers to thank women who had taken extra shifts in munitions factories. These actions did not diminish his authority. On the contrary, they deepened the image of a leader who was both steel and flesh. Similarly, Abraham Lincoln, who once invited political rivals into his cabinet, understood that victory was not achieved through fear alone, but also through respect and trust. In the corporate world, there are CEOs known for their cold exteriors who quietly support employees through personal crises, not for PR optics, but to maintain a minimum level of connection. This is not about sharing secrets or erasing strategic boundaries. It is about keeping windows in the fortress, allowing the light of humanity to filter through. A leader completely cut off will eventually lose the ability to understand those they lead. And a person who no longer understands humanity will make strategic errors because they misjudge the crowd's reactions. Human moments are also a reminder. Power only has meaning when it serves a purpose greater than itself. When you send a heartfelt thank you, listen to a personal story, or help someone through a crisis, you are not weakening your fortress. You are softening its walls just enough. This maintains psychological balance. You remain vigilant against schemes, but do not lose your own soul. In the end, a little warmth is not weakness. It is wisdom, knowing when to be firm and when to be gentle. In the storm of power, this warmth may be the very thing that keeps you from becoming a hollow cynic. The fortress strategy is not just isolation, learning from Lincoln and the team of rivals. In the history of American politics, Abraham Lincoln stands as living proof that building a fortress does not always mean absolute isolation. When he won the presidency in 1860, Lincoln faced a fractured nation and a cabinet filled with men who had once opposed him. Instead of surrounding himself only with those who agreed with him, he brought his fiercest political adversaries into his cabinet, a group history calls the team of rivals. This decision was neither a romantic gesture nor a naive gamble. It was a profound strategic calculation. Lincoln understood that by bringing opposing factions to the same table, he could both monitor them and harness their talents and influence. He maintained his principle. Distance and vigilance still applied. He did not share every private thought or grant absolute power. But neither did he imprison himself within a small, insular circle. This balance allowed Lincoln to maintain authority and hold together a nation on the brink of collapse. This strategy delivers an essential message. Extreme isolation can cost you information, diversity of perspectives, and ultimately, your strength. A fortress with no windows may protect you in the short term, but it also blinds you to changes outside. Lincoln proved that keeping a few windows open, under tight control, can transform adversaries into valuable resources. In modern business and politics, many leaders have embraced this spirit. They assemble collaborative teams that include strong dissenters to ensure their decisions are not distorted by echo chambers. But they also draw clear boundaries. Debate does not equal betrayal, and ultimate authority must remain protected. The takeaway is not to demolish your fortress, but to build it wisely. A good wall not only blocks enemies, but also has controlled openings for light and fresh air. Lincoln's wisdom shows that sustainable power is not blind isolation, but the ability to regulate distance, leveraging others' talents without surrendering the initiative. How to build a fortress without imprisoning yourself. A well-constructed fortress protects you from betrayal and chaos. But if you build walls too thick, with no windows and no exits, you risk becoming its prisoner. Power requires alertness, but it also demands vision and flexibility. So how can you build a fortress without locking yourself inside? First, set clear boundaries. Not everyone who smiles at you deserves to know your plans. Keep crucial information within a very small circle. And even within that circle, no one should ever see the entire picture. But boundaries are not the same as iron walls. You can still listen to dissenting opinions and accept feedback from trusted sources to avoid falling into an echo chamber of complacency. Second, preserve a few human connections outside the realm of power. This could be a friend unconnected to your work, a family you trust deeply, or a small community where you can take off your armor without fear of exploitation. These connections are not for sharing strategy. They are to keep your heart tethered to humanity, to remind you why you are fighting in the first place. Third, keep observing the world beyond your walls. A closed fortress can blind you to critical changes. Just as a company that ignores customer feedback quickly falls behind, a leader who fails to monitor the world will be outmaneuvered. Leave a few cracks so that new information and ideas can filter in, but tightly control their path. Finally, cultivate the habit of self-examination. The greatest strength of a fortress lies not only in its thick walls, but in the builder's ability to know when to modify or dismantle parts of it. Ask yourself regularly, does this distance still protect me, or is it costing me vital connections? A wise fortress is never a permanent prison. It is a strategic tool, ready to adapt as the landscape changes. Conclusion: an invitation to enter the game of power. Imagine standing alone on a mountaintop. The wind lashes your face, and below you is the noise of the world. Conversations, handshakes, promises, and schemes. Up here, at the summit, there is no familiar laughter, no shoulder to lean on. Only stillness, clarity, and power remain. This is not a romantic scene, nor is it a tragedy. It is the reality every great leader understands. Machiavelli wrote this truth long ago in distant Florence. Power does not reward the predictable, nor does it protect dreamers who believe in absolute friendship. Yet he also implied another message. Solitude is not punishment. It is a conscious choice, a strategy to survive and to steer the course of your own destiny. The walls you build are not meant to push the world away, but to keep your strength within. However, power only has true meaning if you understand why you desire it. If you build your fortress merely to prove yourself or to hide your fear, you will eventually be consumed by your own walls. But if you build it with clarity, with a vision that reaches beyond your ego, you will not only protect yourself, you will shape the world outside. So when you see a leader remain silent after a scandal, or a business titan vanish from the spotlight amid turmoil, do not rush to call them cold. Understand that they are playing the real game, the game that is quiet, that requires few friends, but demands strategy, distance, and discipline. Now the question turns to you. Do you want to be loved, or do you want to be powerful? Do you want applause today, or a legacy that endures after the lights go out? Power never grants both. But if you are willing to face the silence, to build your fortress with wisdom rather than despair, and to step into the game that most people fear, then, as Machiavelli once hinted, welcome to the true game. This is not a warning, it is an invitation, and only you can decide to walk through that gate.